Hello, welcome to the EPG Pathshala program in Linguistics. I am Pramod Pandey, Center for Linguistics, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Today we are going to discuss Module 20 of the course Introduction to Phonetics and Phonology. The title of the module is Principles of Phonemic Analysis 2. That means it's a continuation of Module 19. In the last module, we looked at two of the main principles of phonemic analysis exhaustively. In the present module, we will be looking at two other principles of linguistic analysis, and we'll also be trying to take a look at all the factors that are involved in analyzing and in describing phonological data. The two principles of phonemic analysis that we are going to discuss today are the principle of free variation and the principle of pattern congruity. We'll begin with the principle of free variation first. The principle of free variation states that when two phonetically similar sounds X and Y always occur in identical environments and the substitution of one with the other does not bring about a change in meaning, then the sounds in question are in free variation. If the two sounds are in free variation, then we conclude that they are allophones of a phoneme. In order to understand what is meant by free variation, examples that come easily to mind are examples such as aspiration in Indian English. As you know, that in English, voiceless plosives p, t, k and the affricate ch are aspirated in a certain environment. The aspiration in native English varieties is rule-governed, systematic. In Indian English, however, we find speakers sometimes aspirating and sometimes not aspirating. So thus you can say park, or you can say park, take, or you can say take. Now we understand that there is no restriction on free variation of aspirated and unaspirated consonants, which means that the free variation is everywhere. The two sounds are also phonetically similar, and they are thus allophones of a phoneme in Indian English. Another set of data from a language, Kashmiri, is found in the variation between the aspirated plosive p and the voiceless fricative f. Both are bilabial, so phonetically similar, but speakers of Kashmiri tend to use them freely without any change in meaning. You can substitute this p for f or f for p. These sounds are found mostly in loan words from Persian, Arabic and English vocabulary. You have thus examples on your screen. Fakir freely varies with fakir. Fazul may vary with fazul, or peace may vary with peace. The two sounds are then always in free variation. There is no contrast between them. Notice that free variation may also be found in phonemes, between phonemes. Thus in English we have words such as you notice, director, economic and food pronounced as alternatively as director, economic and food. The phonemes in free variation here are E versus I, E versus A, and U versus U. That is the long U versus the short U. These sounds, that is E and I, E and A, and U and U, are actually phonemes because they occur in contrastive distribution in words such as sit and sight, sit and set, and full and fool. In such a situation then we get phonemic free variation. Now we have then two kinds of free variation. One phonemic free variation and the other allophonic free variation. What is the difference between them? The difference between phonemic free variation and allophonic free variation is that phonemic free variation is always conditioned to either a phonological context or a morphological context or a lexical context. We looked at some examples from English where we have two phonemes occurring in given lexical items such as economic, etc. As different from phonemic free variation, allophonic free variation can be both context sensitive or context free. We saw, for example, that in Kashmiri, pa and fa can vary in any context, and in Indian English, aspirated and unaspirated plosives can vary in any context. These phenomena, processes, are context free variation. We can also have context sensitive variation like the phonemes have. For example, in Malayalam we have a free variation between ba and fricative v in given contexts. Take a look at the data given here. So we have this parentization rule in Malayalam which says that ba is pronounced as v between two vowels, and this variation is of course variation, which means that the rule must apply optionally, and this is restricted to fast speech pronunciations in Malayalam. Most allophonic variations are fast speech phenomena. Now we turn to the principle of pattern congruity. What is pattern congruity? Pattern congruity is not really a principle of phonemic analysis. It rather helps us to carry on phonemic analysis almost when you are in the middle of it. All that it says is that sounds tend to occur in a certain pattern. To give you an example of how the principle is used, let us say that a language has 4 voiceless plosives occurring in the position of bilabial, dental, retroflex and velar, pa, ta, ta and ka. It so happens that in the course of the data you have found there to be also voiced phonemes such as ba, da and da in those same places, namely bilabial, dental and retroflex. However, you have not been able to find a voiced plosive in the velar position. So then you resort to the principle of pattern congruity. Because sounds tend to occur in a pattern, you would look for a g in your data. Even though you don't have it, you will go further to find out if there is a g. It is quite likely that you may find g in some cases, or you may not find g at all in the language, and in that case then you conclude that there are not 8 but 7 plosives in the language. So pattern congruity does not help you to conclude for sure, but it helps you to carry on with your analysis and then to arrive at conclusions after full consideration of the data. Now let's take a look at some of the sounds in pattern. So we have stops here in Maithili, also vowels in Maithili. You will notice that in Maithili the stops are very regular in pattern. So you have bilabial, dental, retroflex, palatal, velar plosives, and these all are voiceless, voiced, voiceless, aspirated, voiced, aspirated. So given 5 places, you multiply into 4 and you get 20 plosives. Similarly, you look at the vowels in Maithili, you have 3 front vowels, you have 3 back vowels, which are actually counterparts in terms of height. So you get E, U, A, O, A, O, and then you have two central vowels. It's quite a symmetrical pattern. Let's turn to a system such as Khasi. This illustrates there to be a lack in the pattern in the way we had discussed it earlier. In Khasi, we have 4 places where plosives occur, namely bilabial, postdental, palatal, and velar. In palatal alone, you get only one plosive, namely ja. In all other places, you get voiceless and voiceless aspirated plosives. Also, for example, you get p and p in addition to b, th and th in addition to d, k and k in addition to g. But in palatal, you get only ja. So you would look for other plosives in the data, but you will not find it, and then you will conclude that Khasi has an asymmetrical pattern. And it's the same way with short vowels in Tulu, for example. Look at the chart of the vowels given here. You have one front close vowel and 2 back close vowels. Then you have a close mid vowel, front mid vowel, and then you don't have any close mid vowel. You have then open mid back vowels. And then you have a single central vowel. Now the vowels do not seem to be symmetrical in the sense that you don't have front and back counterparts of the vowels. They all occur at different places, and there is no real clear patterning amongst them. These are the examples of both symmetrical and asymmetrical patterns of the arrangements of segments. Let us now begin to look at the various points to be considered in the phonemic analysis. In order to do so, we will consider the data given in the textbook entitled Problem Book in Phonology by Halle and Clemens. Students of phonology have used it for a long time, so we will use the data given in this book here. But you are free to take a look at many other textbooks that are given in the references and try and find your way through the data given there. Now, in discussing the data here, we will be referring to the page numbers in the book and the names of the languages for the data we want to consider. So I hope you have had time to go through the book and the linguistic data given there with a cursory glance, so that when we refer to the languages, you know what languages and what kind of data are being discussed. We will begin with the topic of establishing phonemes. How do we establish phonemes? It's a very simple process. We note the sounds which are phonetically similar and can be suspected to be phonemes or allophones. Once we have them, then we look for minimal pairs for them. For example, in the data on EU liquids, we have 2 sounds, p and f. Now these 2 sounds are phonetically similar because one is a bilabial voiceless plosive and the other is a labiodental voiceless fricative. It is quite likely that they are allophones of a phoneme, but it is also equally likely that they are phonemes, and so we look first for minimal pairs, and we actually find the minimal. Now let's take a look at the consonants from EU liquids. There are 2 consonants here, a voiceless bilabial fricative f and a voiceless labiodental fricative f. Both are apparently phonetically similar, both are voiceless, both are fricatives. One is bilabial and the other is labiodental. It's quite likely that the 2 sounds are allophones of a phoneme, and it is equally likely that the 2 sounds are phonemes. We first try to find out whether the 2 sounds are phoneme. Where do we find them? In minimal pairs. Do we have minimal pairs for EU liquids? Yes, we do. We have 2 words which give us the minimal pairs, namely flay, which means to buy, and flay, which means to pluck. We then conclude that p and f are phonemes in the language. We will now consider the factors that are important in establishing allophones in complementary distribution. We looked at some of these points in the last module, and we repeat them here on the screen. So you begin with specifying the details of the context in which the sounds occur. You then state the distribution of the sounds in terms of their context. Next, you state the groups or the classes of the sounds in question. And then you determine the basic sound. Following the determination of the basic sound, you make a statement of the analysis both informally and formally. To begin with, we will consider the data discussed in the problem book in phonology. Before we do that, a certain note of the differences between the IPA symbols and some of the symbols that have been used in these books. These are given there. You have prepalatal obstruents, long vowels, and palatal approximant. These three types of sounds have different symbols. The important point to note is that long vowels are written with two occurrences of the vowel symbol, such as u, u, and like in IPA, where they are written with the two dots, the colon dot. In all other respects, the symbols used are the same. Now, I draw your attention to the phonological data in two languages. One, Congo. The sounds here are obstruents, so we call them Congo obstruents. And we have the liquids in Ganda. So we'll consider the distribution of the data and their analysis in these two languages. Please go to the facts and the data for these languages in the textbook, and then come back to the analysis. The distribution of the obstruents in Congo and of the liquids in Ganda are given in the chart that you have before you. As you notice, for the Congo obstruents, the two sets of sounds that are phonetically similar and whose distribution we have to examine in order to establish whether they occur in complementary distribution or not, we notice the context. All the contexts are exhaustively given here. Thus, the alveolar or dental plosives t, s, z. For t we have two environments, for s we have noted three environments, and for z again three environments. The number of the words in which the environments are found is also specified against the environment. These second set of the obstruents are ch, sh, and zh. Their environments are also listed, just as the environments of t, s, z are listed. Take a look at them and see if they occur in complementary distribution. We next take a look at the Ganda liquids. The distribution of the liquids r and l are also given here. Consider them. What do we notice in these two data sets? For the obstruents, you will notice that the relevant context is the following vowel. You notice that in the alveopalatal obstruents ch, sh, and zh, all of them occur before a certain vowel. Which vowel is it? It is the close front vowel E. Now, do the alveolar sounds occur in the same environment? You will find that no. they occur before all other vowels such as O, U, A, even consonants such as W, but they never occur before the closed front vowel E, because then the relevant context for us to establish that the two sets of sounds are allophones is the following context, namely the occurrence of the front closed vowel E before the alveopalatal set. Now let us turn to the environments of the gander liquids. What do we notice there? If we notice that the following context, as in the case of the obstruents, what we find is that there is hardly anything which is separate for them. The environments of the following context are almost the same in both the cases. Both the sounds may have A after them or any other vowel or consonant after them. So it is virtually not possible for us to have any kind of complementariness established on the basis of the following sounds. Even if there are diverse sounds, we are not able to establish any natural class as far as they are concerned. Turn now to the preceding sound. Unlike for Congo obstruents, the preceding sound here is quite revealing about the distribution of the two sounds, whereas for L we find a varied number of contexts, word initial or a vowel such as O or U, but for R we always find only two types of vowels. One, the E, that is the closed front vowel, and the other is the closed mid vowel A, long or short, which means that there are only these front vowels which precede the trill R. Now that is the context where the L, the lateral L never occurs. Thus R and L are in complementary distribution. When we notice the vowels which occur in the context which are specific to one set of sounds, what we have to do is to try and see if we can generalize about them. For example, for the trill R we find E and A and long A. What we find that is common for all these sounds is the fact that they are front vowels. No front vowel ever occurs in the context preceding the lateral L. Thus we have to generalize and make statements about the classes of sounds in phonemic analysis. Once that is done, then we can make informal and formal statements about the relationship between these sounds as allophone. 2 points are specifically crucial in phonemic analysis. One is the statement of the natural class of sounds, a group of sounds, and the other is the establishing the basic phoneme of amongst the alternating segments. Let's take a look at the problem of the statement of the natural class of a sound. Take a look at the data on Proto-Bantu languages. What do we find there? A proto-language is a reconstructed language. So when we don't have the data for an earlier form of related languages, we try to establish on the basis of a certain philological method of the form that must have existed before. With us, Bantu languages not being written languages, on the basis of the present day Bantu languages, we try to establish the Bantu language as it existed before, and such a language is called a Proto-Bantu language. What do we find in Proto-Bantu as far as the obstruents are concerned? There are two sets of sounds. One is voiced obstruent stops. How do we characterize the other set? The answer is that the other set consists of approximants. Find out how. Now let's take a look at Lowland Murut on page 57. There are two sounds, v and r, which are clearly approximants. One is bilabial and the other is velar. There is a third sound, you see there. It appears to be a flap. Now, when we try to characterize these three sounds into a natural class, we find ourselves in a problem here. This has to do with the difficulties inherent in structural phonemic analysis, where it is not always possible to characterize a natural class. We will see later how the notion of distinctive features helps us get around this problem. And now, determining the basic sounds. Take a look at the Proto-Bantu data, which has obstruents and approximants as alternating allophones. Now, between the two sets, namely obstruents and approximants, which of them is basic? We have to conclude that it is the approximants which are basic and not the obstruents. Why? Because the obstruents occur in restricted context. What is the context? The context is following nasal consonants with the same place of articulation. That is, following homoorganic nasal consonants. The approximants occur more freely in the language. Thus, the approximants are the basic sounds and the obstruents are derived from them. So I hope you have had a good look at the data in the textbook on the various languages that we have discussed. Let us now address the problem of the statement of the rule. Recall from the discussion in the past module, the description can be informal as in the first stage and then formal in the second stage. For you, the beginning student in phonemic analysis. As we will see later, once you have been able to get a hold of phonemic analysis using these methods, you can bypass them and come to a more sophisticated formal statement of rules, but that will take a little while. Let us turn to the informal statement of the complementary distribution of the Ganda liquids R and L. How do we go about it? We start by noting that R and L are phonetically similar sounds. And then we look at the context. We find that R occurs in a given context, such as following front vowels, E and A. L never occurs in those contexts. L occurs in all other contexts. Step 3. R and L are in mutually exclusive environments. Step 4. R and L are allophones of the language. Step 5. L is the one which is widely distributed and R is more restricted. L thus is the phoneme in the language and R is an allophone in the language. This is the way we write out the informal statement of the rule. The formal statement, however, takes note of the conclusions and states the conclusions in different formal forms, as we saw. Let us take a look at the formal format of the first type and then of the second type. The formal statement of the first type that we noted is given on your screen. It says that L and R are a family of sounds. R occurs after front vowels, L occurs elsewhere. And now to the formal statement 2. All that it says is that L is the phoneme. It changes to an allophone, R, following front vowels. The statement is in the form of a rule. It is assumed that the rule is there in the phonological grammar of the language. Now let us summarize the discussion in this module. We began with looking at the two principles of phonemic analysis, namely principle of free variation and principle of pattern congruity. We found that these are less complex than the principle of complementary distribution that we discussed in the last module. We then, in order to close the discussion of the application of these principles, looked at the problems of the statement of the generalizations arrived at in terms of informal and formal formats. I hope you will have time to go through the data and facts in the book that we have discussed here and go through the data again and again in order to get a hold over the understanding of finding a way out of the complexities of phonological data. I hope you will also have time to go through phonological data in other textbooks that are given as references in the Learn More part of the present module. Thank you.